The Great Hall of Prime was the largest structure ever built by living hands. Its crystal walls stretched upward for nearly a mile, and its floor could hold 1 million beings at once. Today, it held only 10,000, but these were the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They had come for the armament exhibition, a tradition older than most civilizations. Ambassador stood at the edge of the human delegation and watched the show. She kept her face calm and pleasant, even though her stomach was tight with nerves. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for 60 years. They were children here, surrounded by ancient giants. The Dominion presented first, as they always did. They ruled 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, and they wanted everyone to remember it. Their holographic display showed a dreadnought nearly 2 kilometers long. Its hull was made of living crystal that could repair itself. Its weapons could crack a moon in half. The gathered delegates made sounds of appreciation and respect. Grand Admiral stood before the display with his arms crossed. He was tall and thin, like all, with skin the color of pale gold and eyes like polished silver. He smiled at the crowd's reaction. His people had been building ships like this for 10,000 years. No one in the galaxy could match them. The hegemony went next. Their ships were not built but grown, massive with hulls of bone and muscle, armed with acid sprayers and organic missiles. They healed their own wounds. They bred new weapons during battle. The delegates watched with a mixture of fascination and disgust. Then came the whose vessels ran on captured black holes. The Bright Communion, whose ships existed partly in dimensions that other species could not even see. The Thornback clans, whose warships were covered in spines that could punch through enemy hulls. Watched them all and kept smiling. Finally, it was humanity's turn. Captain walked to the presentation platform. He was a short man with gray at his temples and a face that showed nothing. Behind him, the hologram flickered to life, showing Earth's flagship design, the Persistence-class cruiser. The hall went quiet. The ship was small, barely 400 meters long. Its armor was simple steel alloy, nothing special. Its weapons were kinetic cannons that fired metal slugs and missiles powered by fusion reactions, technology that they had abandoned 5,000 years ago. Grand Admiral laughed. It was not a quiet laugh. It echoed through the crystal hall, and soon others joined him. The ambassador made a wet sound that passed for mockery in their species. Even the, who rarely showed emotion, flickered with what might have been amusement. Captain stood still and waited for the laughter to stop. An analyst from the delegation stepped forward to give the official assessment. She was young for her role, with curious eyes that studied the human ship longer than necessary. Her name was, and something about the design troubled her, though she could not say what. She read from her tablet. The human vessel shows significant redundancy in all systems, multiple backup reactors, secondary and tertiary command centers, manual overrides for every automated function, crew complement of 800, which is nearly 10 times the standard for a ship of this size. She paused. Assessment. The designers appear to expect their own technology to fail. This suggests a lack of confidence in their engineering capabilities. More laughter. Grand Admiral stepped forward, still smiling. They have built a ship expecting it to break, he announced. How very primitive, how very human. He turned to, tell me, Ambassador, do your people not trust your own machines? Smile did not waver. We trust them completely, Grand Admiral. We simply plan for situations where trust is not enough. Shook his head. And the crew size, 800 souls to operate a ship that any civilized species would run with 50. Humans prefer to have options, said. A ship with 50 crew has 50 options when something goes wrong. A ship with 800 has 800. The Grand Admiral's smile turned pitying. Nothing will go wrong on a ship, Ambassador. That is what 10,000 years of advancement provides. Your people will understand this in time, when you have matured. The official assessment was entered into the conclave's records: experimental curiosity, no strategic value, classification, negligible threat. Accepted the document with a polite nod. She thanked the conclave for their time and their wisdom. She gathered her delegation and prepared to leave. Captain walked beside her, his face still showing nothing. "They laughed at us," he said quietly. "Yes," agreed, "they did. Does that not anger you?" Glanced at him. "Captain, I grew up on Earth. I studied human history. Do you know how many times our ancestors were laughed at? The first planes, the first rockets, the first computers. Every single time someone said it would never work. Someone said it was foolish. Someone laughed." Her smile finally showed something true behind it. "We are still here. Most of the people who laughed are not." They left the great hall without looking back. In the observation gallery above, watched them go. She had been assigned to write the full technical report on the human vessel, and something about it still bothered her. She pulled up the schematics again on her tablet and studied them. The redundancies were not random. They followed a pattern. Every critical system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. The crew quarters were spread throughout the ship in sealed compartments. The command centers were buried deep in the hull, protected by layers of armor. These humans had not built a ship expecting it to fail. They had built a ship expecting everything else to fail around it. She thought about the other vessels presented today. The dreadnoughts were elegant and powerful, but they depended on their crystal hulls remaining intact. They were terrifying, but they needed living tissue to regenerate. The vessels were incomprehensible, but they required stable singularities to function. The human ship required nothing but humans. Looked down at the departing delegation one more time. Ambassador was smiling again, calm and pleasant, as if she had not just been humiliated before the galaxy's most powerful beings. That smile bothered more than the ship. She added a note to her report, one that her superiors would probably ignore: recommend continued observation of human military development. Their design philosophy suggests preparation for scenarios that other species do not consider. She was right. Her superiors did ignore it. They would not ignore it for long. 18 months after the exhibition, the Dominion decided that humanity needed a lesson. The frontier was a string of 12 colony worlds at the edge of human space. 50 million people lived there, building new lives on new planets. They had been there for 30 years, long enough to call it home. The Dominion had other ideas. Grand Admiral arrived with 30 warships. His flagship, the Radiance of, led the formation. Its crystal hull caught the light of distant stars and scattered it like a diamond the size of a mountain. Behind it came cruisers and destroyers and support vessels, enough firepower to crack a world in half. The message was simple: leave. This space belongs to the Dominion now. Accept vassal status or face destruction. Earth's response surprised everyone. No. Read the transmission 3 times. He had done this 100 times before to 100 different species. No one said no. No one was foolish enough to fight the Dominion over border territories, especially not a species with negligible threat classification. He ordered his fleet forward. The Human Defense Force was waiting for them near the 4th planet of 442, 8 Persistence-class cruisers and a dozen smaller ships. Captain commanded from the UES Persistence herself. He had been given simple orders: delay the enemy, buy time for evacuation, make them pay for every kilometer. Looked at the human formation and felt something close to pity. These primitives were about to learn why the galaxy respected the Dominion. He gave the order for the Alpha strike. 30 ships fired as one. Their energy weapons were synchronized to the microsecond, designed to overwhelm shields and destroy command systems in a single overwhelming blow. It was doctrine perfected over 10,000 years. Every human ship was hit. The Persistence lost her bridge in the first second, Plasma fire punched through her hull and killed 60 crew members, including her executive officer. 3 other cruisers lost engines. 2 lost weapons. The destroyer Valiant simply broke apart, spilling bodies and debris into the void. Watched the destruction and prepared his surrender demands. This was the part he enjoyed, the moment when inferior species realized their mistake. Then the human ship started shooting back. The Persistence should have been dead. Her bridge was gone. Her primary reactor was failing. But deep in her hull, in the secondary command center that the had laughed at, Captain was already giving orders. Backup power came online. Secondary weapons found targets. The ship turned toward the enemy and accelerated. All 7 surviving cruisers did the same. Felt the first cold touch of confusion. Why were they not surrendering? Their command structure was destroyed. Their vessels were crippled. Any rational species would recognize defeat and seek terms. The humans were not seeking terms. They were seeking blood. The battle lasted 6 hours. It was not a battle in the way they understood battles. There was no elegance, no precision, no beautiful formations wheeling through space. It was a brawl, a knife fight in a dark room. Human ships that should have been dead refused to die. When primary weapons failed, they used secondary weapons. When secondary weapons failed, they used missiles. When missiles ran out, they rammed debris into enemy vessels. When the cruiser Endurance lost all power, her captain ordered the reactor overloaded. The explosion took a destroyer with her. Commanded from 3 different locations as the Persistence took hit after hit. He lost count of how many compartments were open to vacuum. He lost count of how many crew were dead. He never lost count of how many ships were still fighting. In the end, the Dominion won. Every human cruiser was destroyed. The smaller ships were hunted down and eliminated. The frontier fell to control. But the cost was something had never experienced. 9 ships. He had lost 9 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers worth more than entire planetary economies. Over 4,000 crew were dead, against an enemy with negligible threat classification, against primitives flying crude metal boxes with chemical weapons. He stood on his bridge and stared at the debris field that had been the human fleet. Somewhere in that wreckage was the Persistence, broken into 3 pieces but still venting atmosphere, still with crew alive inside, still, somehow, trying to survive. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "Grand Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human flagship." Frowned, "That ship is destroyed." "Yes, sir, but someone is still transmitting." He ordered it played. Captain's voice came through, distorted by static and damage. He was clearly wounded. His words came slowly with effort. "This is Captain to Fleet. Congratulations on your victory. You have killed 2,000 of my people today. You have destroyed 8 of our ships. You have taken 12 of our worlds." A pause filled with labored breathing. "Enjoy it. We will be back. And next time we will bring friends." The transmission ended. Filed his report that night. He requested that humanity's threat classification be upgraded. He explained the battle in detail. He emphasized that the humans had fought far beyond any reasonable expectation, that they had inflicted losses that should have been impossible. The Dominion Council reviewed his report and his request. The humans had lost. They had been driven from the frontier. Their fleet was destroyed. What did it matter if they had caused some damage in the process? Tried to argue. He tried to explain what he had seen in that battle. A species that did not surrender when it was beaten. A species that treated death as a tool rather than a defeat. A species that had spent the entire fight trying to hurt him rather than trying to survive. The Council did not listen. On Earth, the Admiralty received the casualty reports. 2,000 dead, 8 ships destroyed, 12 worlds lost. It was the worst military defeat in human history. They responded by ordering the construction of 200 more Persistence-class cruisers. And something else, something larger, something designed not to survive but to make the enemy wish they had not. Project designation, Spite. In her office on Prime, Red's battle report and felt cold fear settle into her stomach. She pulled up her old notes from the exhibition, the ones her superiors had ignored. Their design philosophy suggests preparation for scenarios that other species do not consider. She understood now what that meant. The humans had not prepared for scenarios where their ships failed. They had prepared for scenarios where victory was impossible, where survival was unlikely, where the only thing left to do was make the enemy bleed. They had designed ships for losing, and they had gotten terrifyingly good at it. She began writing a new report, one that she knew would also be ignored. But she wrote it anyway. Someone had to understand what was coming. Someone had to warn them that the humans were just getting started. 3 years into the war, the Dominion was winning. Every battle, every campaign, every strategic objective. Their fleets swept through human space like a storm through dry grass. They captured system after system, planet after planet. Their flag flew over 60 human worlds. And they were dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily, constantly, in ways that no war had ever killed them before. Ships lost to mines that appeared in shipping lanes that had been cleared yesterday. Convoys ambushed by human raiders that struck from nowhere and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Soldiers killed by colonists who refused to accept that the war was over. Grand Admiral stood in his war room and studied the holographic map. Blue lights showed Dominion territory, expanding every month. Red lights showed human space, shrinking every month. By every measure that mattered, they were crushing the primitives. So why did he feel like he was drowning? Reports, he ordered. His logistics officer stepped forward. We have lost 43 vessels this month to non-combat causes: mines, sabotage, ambush raids. Another 60 are in repair facilities with damage from occupation actions. She paused. Crew losses are running at triple our projections. And human losses? Difficult to estimate, sir. They do not fight conventional battles. They evacuate civilian populations before we arrive. They destroy infrastructure rather than let us capture it. When we take a world, we take ruins. Closed his eyes. This was not how war was supposed to work. You defeated the enemy's fleet. You occupied their territory. They surrendered. That was how it had always worked. The humans had not read that particular manual. Instead of defending their worlds, they abandoned them. They stripped everything of value and left behind nothing but empty buildings and booby traps. When forces landed, they found ghost towns. When ships entered orbit, they found minefields that had not existed a week before. And then the humans came back. Not to fight, not to reclaim territory, just to hurt. Small squadrons appearing from nowhere to hit supply convoys. Stealth ships laying weapons in shipping lanes. Special forces landing on occupied worlds to teach colonists how to make their occupiers miserable. The Dominion was stretched thin. Every captured world needed troops to hold it. Every shipping lane needed escorts to protect it. Every installation needed guards to watch for saboteurs. And the humans just kept bleeding them. Cut by cut, ship by ship, soldier by soldier. Requested another audience with the Dominion Council. They granted it only because she had been right about so many things already. She walked into the chamber feeling like she was walking to her own execution. "We are making a terrible mistake," she said. The council leader leaned forward. "We control 60 human worlds. We have destroyed over 400 of their warships. In what way are we making a mistake?" Took a deep breath. "We evaluated humans based on their technology. We found them inferior, but technology was never their weapon." She activated her presentation, showing graphs and charts that painted a picture in numbers. "We have lost 612 ships since this war began. They have lost 423. We are losing faster than they are. Acceptable losses for the territory gained." With respect, Council Leader, the territory is worthless. We hold ruins and graves. We spend more resources defending those worlds than we gain from controlling them. She changed the display. At current attrition rates, we will exhaust our military reserves in 12 years. They will exhaust theirs in 18 months. The council stirred. This was a number they understood. Continued before they could interrupt. But they are building faster than they are dying. We have confirmed over 200 new Persistence-class vessels in the past year alone. In 4 years, their fleet will outnumber ours. She paused. And they are building something else, something larger. She showed them the intelligence images, a shipyard hidden in the asteroid belt of a human system. Massive construction frames holding vessels twice the size of anything humans had built before. The name on the hull of the first ship was visible, UES Spite. We do not know what weapons these ships carry, said, but we know what they are designed for, not to win battles, to break the enemy's will to continue fighting. These are not warships. They are vengeance made metal. The council leader studied the images. What do you recommend? Peace, immediately. Return what we have taken and negotiate boundaries that both species can accept. The humans do not want our territory. They want us to stop taking theirs. Silence. Then the council leader shook his head. Impossible. We are the Dominion. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We do not surrender to primitives. We do not negotiate from positions of strength. He stood. We will increase production. We will deploy more ships. We will crush this rebellion as we have crushed every rebellion before. Wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that this was not a rebellion, that the humans were not fighting for independence or resources or ideology. They were fighting because that was what humans did. They were a species born on a world that tried to kill them every day, and they had survived by being too stubborn to die. Instead, she bowed her head and left the chamber. That night, she made a decision that would have gotten her executed if anyone discovered it. She opened a secure channel to a frequency that human intelligence had made available to potential defectors. She transmitted a simple message. I believe I can help you end this war. I require asylum. The response came 6 hours later. Granted. Stand by for extraction. 2 weeks after her defection, the UES Spite launched from her construction yard. She was accompanied by her sister ships, Grudge, Reckoning, and Consequence. Each one was over 800 meters long, armored like a small moon, carrying weapons that human engineers had designed with a single purpose in mind. They were not built to win. They were built to hurt. Admiral, now commanding the human First Fleet, received the official commission and read the mission orders. They were simple. Find the main fleet. Engage at close range. Make Grand Admiral regret ever laughing at humanity. Remembered standing in that exhibition hall 6 years ago, watching the galaxy mock his people's ships. He remembered the polite smile on Ambassador's face. He remembered thinking that someday, someone would have to teach these ancient empires a lesson about humanity. He had not expected to be the teacher. He ordered the fleet to set course for the Gulf, where intelligence suggested the main enemy fleet was gathering. 300 enemy ships, the largest concentration of power in centuries. Had 180 vessels. He smiled for the first time in months. It was almost fair. The Battle of Gulf would be remembered as the day the galaxy changed, not because of the tactics or the technology or the number of ships involved, because of what it proved about the nature of war itself. Grand Admiral had assembled 300 warships for this engagement. 12 planet-killer dreadnoughts formed the core of his formation, each one capable of destroying continents. Around them clustered cruisers and destroyers and support vessels, enough firepower to burn a civilization to ash. This was the full might of the Dominion, gathered to end the human problem once and for all. Admiral brought 180 ships. The 4 Spite-class dreadnoughts led his formation. Behind them came the surviving Persistence-class cruisers, veterans of a dozen battles, their hulls patched and still fighting. Smaller ships filled the gaps. It was everything humanity had. The two fleets met in the empty space between star systems, where there was nothing but darkness and death. Opened communications. Admiral, your position is hopeless. Surrender now and we will spare your crews. Continue fighting and you will all die. His response was brief, come and make us. The battle began the way all battles began. Elegant formation maneuvers, synchronized energy strikes, overwhelming force concentrated on critical targets, doctrine perfected over 10,000 years. The human fleet charged directly into the fire. They did not try to outmaneuver they did not try to find weaknesses in the formation. They accelerated straight toward the enemy line, accepting horrific casualties to close the distance. Ships died by the dozen in those first terrible minutes. The cruiser Defiance was vaporized by concentrated dreadnought fire. The destroyer pack lost half its numbers before they reached weapons range. But the survivors kept coming. The Spite led the assault. Her massive hull absorbed punishment that would have destroyed 3 normal cruisers. Her armor was designed for this, layer after layer of metal and composite that ablated and burned and still held together. Admiral stood on her bridge and watched his people die and gave only one order. Close the distance, get in their face, make them feel it. Weapons were designed for long-range precision. They were elegant, surgical. They could destroy a ship from 1,000 kilometers away with a single perfect shot. Human weapons were designed for close-range brutality. Kinetic cannons that fired metal slugs the size of, nuclear missiles that cared nothing for shields or armor, weapons that did not kill cleanly, but killed certainly. When the human fleet reached knife-fighting range, the battle changed. Watched his formation dissolve into chaos. His ships could not coordinate their fire with human vessels weaving between them. His elegant tactics meant nothing when the enemy was close enough to spit on. His crews, trained for clean victories, panicked as human ships rammed and clawed and exploded against their hulls. The Spite came for the radiance of. Had studied for years. He knew the Grand Admiral's patterns, his habits, his arrogance. He knew that would never retreat from his own flagship. He knew that cutting off the head would kill the snake. The Spite took 4 direct hits from the Radiance's main weapons. Her hull cracked. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. Over 200 crew died in those seconds. She kept coming. Her reinforced prow struck the Radiance amidships, punching through the crystal hull like a fist through glass. The 2 ships locked together, momentum carrying them in a slow spin through the debris field. And then the boarding parties deployed. Marines were not prepared for what came through those boarding tunnels. Human soldiers in heavy armor, armed with weapons designed to kill at close range. They were not elegant. They were not surgical. They were brutal and efficient and absolutely unstoppable. Died in his command chamber. He had drawn a sidearm, a weapon he had never fired in combat. He managed to kill 2 human Marines before they reached him. The third put a round through his skull. His last transmission was a plea for reinforcement that would never come. The Radiance of broke apart 20 minutes later. Her reactor lost containment. The explosion took the Spite's forward section with it, but had already transferred his flag to the Grudge. He watched his former ship die and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The Battle of Gulf lasted 9 hours. When it ended, they had lost 216 ships, including all 12 dreadnoughts. Their Grand Admiral was dead. Their fleet was shattered. The survivors fled in disorder, carrying tales of horror back to their. Humanity lost 94 vessels, over 30,000 crew, but the road to Prime was open. What followed was not conquest, it was education. Human fleets did not occupy worlds, they destroyed them. Orbital bombardment reduced military installations to craters. Raiders eliminated supply convoys. Infrastructure that had taken centuries to build burned in hours. The message was clear. You wanted war. Here it is. How much more can you afford? Provided intelligence that made it worse. Fleet positions, defensive codes, the location of the Dominion Council's emergency bunker. She had betrayed her civilization, but she told herself she was saving it. The alternative was extinction. Within 3 months, human ships were in orbit around Prime itself. Ambassador delivered the ultimatum in person. She stood in the Council's bunker, surrounded by the leaders of a dying empire. They looked old now, these ancient rulers, old and tired and afraid. You had 10,000 years, she told them. You could have built something that lasted. Instead, you built something that bullied, that mocked, that conquered. She smiled, the same polite smile she had worn in that exhibition hall 7 years ago. Now you deal with us. The council leader spoke. His voice was hollow. What are your terms? Unconditional surrender. You will release all human worlds. You will pay reparations for the damage you have caused. You will reduce your military to a defensive force only, and you will never threaten another species again. And if we refuse? Glanced upward toward the ceiling, toward the sky, toward the ships waiting in orbit. Then Prime becomes uninhabitable. Your species becomes refugees. Your empire becomes a memory. Her smile did not waver. We have lost 2 million people in this war, council leader. Do you really think we would hesitate to end you? The council refused. Their pride would not let them accept such terms from primitives. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They would not kneel to creatures who had been throwing rocks at each other when the Dominion was young. So humanity took what it needed. The bombardment of Prime was surgical. Military installations, government buildings, communication networks, everything the Dominion needed to function as a galactic power. When it was over, they still had their people, but they had nothing else. The empire that had laughed at humanity's ships was broken. And the galaxy watched in stunned silence. 5 years after the fall of the Dominion, the Galactic Conclave met again on Prime. The Great Crystal Hall looked the same as it always had. The delegates looked very different. The seat was still occupied, but their representatives spoke softly now. Their empire was gone, reduced to a single system. Their fleets were scrapped. Their pride was ashes. They attended the conclave because humanity allowed them to, and everyone knew it. The 3 spiral arms that had belonged to the Dominion were chaos. Vassal species had declared independence the moment their masters fell. Border wars erupted. Trade networks collapsed. A power structure that had lasted 10,000 years crumbled in less than a decade. Into this vacuum stepped humanity. Not as conquerors. They had no interest in empire. They had seen what empire did to and they wanted no part of it. Not as saviors either. They held no illusions about galactic gratitude. People did not thank the storm that broke their chains. They stepped in as something the galaxy had never seen before, honest brokers. Ambassador led the Terran diplomatic corps through negotiations that would reshape civilization. She offered things that other great powers had never offered: mutual defense pacts without vassalage, trade agreements without exploitation, military assistance without occupation. Species that had spent under domination found themselves sitting across tables from the primitives everyone had laughed at, negotiating as equals. Admiral, now chairman of Earth's Joint Chiefs of Staff, addressed the assembled delegates. He was older now, gray at his temples turned to white. He had lost friends in every battle of the war. He had sent thousands of people to their deaths and watched his ships burn in the darkness between stars. He had also watched his species prove that they belonged among the stars. You spent 10,000 years perfecting war, he told the conclave, building bigger ships, more powerful weapons, more efficient ways to kill, and you learned nothing. He paused and looked around the hall. Delegates, representatives, thornback chieftains. dozens of species who had watched the Dominion fall and wondered what would happen next. We spent 10,000 years perfecting survival, learning to lose and keep fighting, learning to fail and try again, learning that the measure of a species is not how elegantly it wins, but how stubbornly it refuses to be destroyed. He stepped back from the podium. We do not want your territory. We do not want your submission. We want something far more valuable, your respect. Earned respect between equals for species that choose to be better than the empires that came before. The conclave voted. By overwhelming majority, they established the Terran Accords, a new framework for galactic civilization based not on conquest but on cooperation, not on hierarchy but on mutual survival. Watched from the gallery, she was the human-appointed liaison to what remained of the people now. It was strange work, helping to rebuild a civilization she had helped destroy, but the humans insisted on it. They did not want the extinct. They did not want them suffering. They wanted them reformed. Different, better, humbler. She still did not fully understand humans. She had studied them for a decade, fought against them, fought alongside them, and they remained a mystery. They were capable of terrible violence, yet they did not seek violence. They had broken the greatest empire in galactic history, yet they did not want power. What they wanted, she finally realized, was to be left alone, to build their homes and raise their children and explore the stars without someone trying to take it all away. They had not started this war. They had just finished it. The new galactic order was not perfect. Nothing ever was. Species still squabbled and competed and occasionally fought. Old grudges did not vanish overnight, but the foundation had changed. The assumption that might made right, that the strong could take from the weak simply because they could, was dead. Humanity had killed it. Ambassador stood before the memorial on New Geneva. It was a wall of black granite stretching for nearly a kilometer, covered with names. 2 million names, every human who had died in the war, soldiers and civilians, veterans and children, the price of survival. Admiral joined her. They stood in silence for a long time, reading names they recognized, friends, colleagues, people they had sent to die. "Do you think it was worth it?" asked. Considered the question. He thought about the exhibition hall all those years ago, when the galaxy had laughed at humanity's ships. He thought about the Battle of 442, when they had proven that laughter was premature. He thought about Gulf, when they had broken the enemy's spine. He thought about the bombardment of Prime, when they had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. "I think," he said finally, "that they will never laugh at us again." Smiled. It was the same polite smile she had worn throughout the war, the one that hid steel beneath silk. "No, no, they will not." Above them, a Persistence-class cruiser passed through orbital traffic. It was a small ship, unremarkable among the gleaming vessels of a dozen species. Its hull was patched and from years of service. Its design was still considered primitive by galactic standards. But no one mocked it anymore. Inside, the crew went about their duties. They checked backup systems. They ran manual diagnostics. They prepared for failures that might never come, just in case. Because humanity had learned something the galaxy never had. The universe did not care about elegance or superiority or ancient glory. It did not reward the proud or the powerful or the technically advanced. It rewarded only one thing: survival. And humans were very, very good at surviving. The cruiser passed out of sight, heading toward the frontier where new colonies were being built. There were still dangers out there. Other empires that might need education. Other species that might think humans were easy prey. They would learn. They all learned eventually. In the great crystal hall of Prime, the conclave continued its work. Treaties were signed. Agreements were reached. A new civilization was being born, built on the ashes of the old. And at the edge of the galaxy, on a small blue world called Earth, children learned the history of their species. They learned about the exhibition where the galaxy had laughed. They learned about the war that followed. They learned about the price of victory. Most importantly, they learned the lesson that humanity had taught the stars. Never mock the ship that refuses to sink. Never underestimate the crew that refuses to die. Never forget that the most dangerous creature in any universe is the one that keeps getting back up. The humans had been mocked for building ships that expected to fail, but they had not expected failure. They had expected the unexpected. They had prepared for the worst because the worst had always come for them. On their death world with its ice ages and its plagues and its predators, they had learned that nothing was certain. Except survival. That was always certain. Because humans made it certain. And now the galaxy knew it too.